I'm Austin Geeth from Harvest Time Church in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, with the Catalyst YouTube. So you guys are all ready. Communion. It's a word that we so often think is just one of those go through the motions types of things. You know, we don't often think about it as an intimate promise, an intimate thing that we do every week or every month at church. You see, when communion first showed up in the Bible, it was in 1 Corinthians 12:23-26. And Jesus is sitting there at the Last Supper during the Passover. And he sits down with his disciples and gives them bread, and then he takes a cup and he's like, "Will you marry me?" And you're thinking, no, that's not in the Bible, that's not what he says. But really, to some of those fishermen back in the day, what they heard when he said, "This is my covenant, will you take and drink it?" They really heard, "Will you marry me?" And so, by this, you know, if I was a disciple, I'd be sitting there thinking, like, Jesus is kind of crazy. Who is this guy? He's telling me to marry him. I mean, we've been following him around for years. I guess we'll just kind of go with it. So they all take the cup and they drink and they have the first communion. And so that happens. And basically, back in the day, when you wanted to make little rabbis with somebody, you'd take your father and you'd be like, "Hey, Dad, I love this girl. Like, I need to marry her." And he'd be like, "All right, well, let's go take like 12 of my sheep or something. Let's go buy the opportunity." So it wasn't buying the lady or the woman. It was actually just buying the opportunity to marry her. So then they'd get all the relatives in this room, and they'd all kind of like this, all be huddled up, and it'd be a really big thing. They'd sit down at this table, and the groom would sit there with his cup, and he'd say, "This is my covenant with you. Take and drink it." At which time she could either take it and be like, "Nah, I'm all right. Maybe next time." Or she could take it and she could drink it. And that would be the sign that she was agreeing, that she'd say yes. At which point, the groom and the bride would then be separated. The groom would go all the way back to her house, or to his house, where his father lived, and he'd start building this place. You know, it actually says mansion, kind of like an insula, the family dwelling. Now, you might think mansion, man, I want one of those, you know. But actually, the word they use in the Greek is apartment. And, you know, on top of that, it's an extension of his father's house. So, when you do the math, maybe not want to marry a Jewish boy anytime soon. But, but anyways, so he's sitting there working on his house, and he doesn't know, he hasn't seen her at all. His best man's kind of being a text messenger, running back and forth, relaying messages. So they don't see each other the entire engagement period. And that'd be kind of hard if that was me. I mean, that'd be rough. But he's sitting there and he's building this house, this place for them to live in. But he doesn't know when it's going to be finished. His father's got to give his stamp of approval. And once he does, then he can go get it. And so she's just sitting around at her house, like, okay, it's like 12:30. You know, she could wait a month, maybe even up to a year sometimes, for her groom to come back and get it. And so when he does, though, he'd come in with all his groomsmen and his best man, and they'd blow their trumpets and they'd be crazy, they'd be shouting, and the bride would basically walk out onto the aisle, and they'd go back home and live in the insula, the family dwelling. Is this kind of striking some chords with you guys at all? You know? Because when Jesus was sitting there at the Passover, the Last Supper, he says, "It's my covenant with you, take and drink it." He was giving not only the disciples, but all of us the promise that, hey, you know, I got to leave, I got to go, but this is my promise. Will you take this covenant and drink it? And so they took it, and all of us should too. And see, Jesus goes, and he's like, "I got to leave. I'm gonna go, but I'm gonna prepare a place for you in my Father's house. And when it's ready, when he tells me it's ready, I'm going to grab my angels and we're going to come back and we're going to bring you all up to live with me in my family's house." You see, communion is not just something that is every day. You know, we do it at church. We take the wafer, we take the cup. It's not something that we just go through the motions. It's an intimate promise that Jesus not only gave to us when he was on the earth, but he also sent his Spirit, you know, his Holy Spirit as that messenger, his best man. So he never really left us. He's in a different form. But that's his promise that he's coming back and that we're going to live with him one day for eternity. Thank you.